Okay, so first of all, apologies for yesterday's slightly shorter and possibly a little bit confused video. I think I just hit a wall with trying to figure out what was being said, but thankfully a lot of people stepped in and helped out in the comments section. And I will get to that shortly. Before I do start talking about this interview with Angelica and getting on with the interview, I just want to discuss something that has actually really upset me, and that is the fact that another creator has created a Patreon account, and I believe that they've gone for one of the higher tiers in terms of membership. And behind that paywall, they are providing members with photos of Maddie. Now, just to clarify, these are photos obtained from family members, I believe. So there's nothing that is, let's say, shaming Maddie's memory. But my objection is this. We should not be, nobody should be selling images of Maddie. This is a little girl who went through, at the very least, 4 years of torture at the hands of that monster. This is a little girl who had only just turned 13 when the rest of her future was taken away from her. And yes, we do feel a sense of, there is a sense in that community that she's almost like our child now. But that doesn't give anybody the right to be selling photos of Maddie. Now, I don't know if once you get behind that paywall, you pay your big chunk of membership. I don't know if the photos are then charged for as well. But the point is, they are behind a paywall, meaning they are still being sold. Because the only way you can get those photos is by paying a decent chunk of money for membership. And I hope I don't offend, but I actually can't understand why anyone who is not a content creator should have multiple images of Maddie in their possession anyway. Now, just to save people a bit of money, if you are after documents in this case, there are several free options. There is my Patreon, which is free to join, and the documents are free. I currently have 30 documents in that Patreon that you can access, and as I mentioned in yesterday's video, should there be any particular documents that you want that I haven't uploaded there, just give me a holler, email me or leave a note in one of my videos, although email is better because I don't always catch everyone's comments, and I will hunt down that document and put it up for you on Patreon. So you don't need to be paying a membership fee just to access documents. If you are wanting to pay a membership fee so you can download photos of Maddie, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. Now, another good source if you are after documents, photos, timelines, anything like that, is a page called crimelines.com. They quite possibly have more documents uploaded than me on Maddie's case, so that could well be the first stop for documents. And again, this is nothing on here is charged for, so you can get a bunch of forensic images, bunch of documents, and lots of information on this page. There is also gavinfish.com. In terms of what he has available, he has information that you can look at. He has a whole heap of forensic images that you can work through. He does have a limited amount of documents and a limited amount of audio, but you do need membership for that. In terms of Patreon membership with Gavin Fish, yes, you get access to the audio, you get access to the documents. Most of those, I think all of those documents are available for free. So if you are after audio, then you need membership for that. I will just mention that in terms of membership with Gavin's Patreon, because he works full time, he doesn't prioritise keeping up with this Patreon. So he tends to be the last one to get things uploaded. And he doesn't always get things added to his Patreon. So long term, I was a member for some time, but it just wasn't beneficial for me because nothing was being uploaded. But certainly, if you are after audio, then this is a good option. His Patreon membership is quite affordable, I think, unless it's gone up. But like I said, the only downside with that is that you probably just want to get the audio that's there and then cancel your membership. And I hate saying that, but I mean, I'm just being a realist. If I was going to pay $5 a month for Patreon membership, then I would hope that I was getting something each month for my membership. Okay, with that out of the way, let's clarify a few things from yesterday's video. I've not put people's names on here because I haven't asked permission. I don't want to be disrespectful and put someone's name up on a video without double checking with them first that they're okay for me to identify who they are. There've been some brilliant, extremely helpful comments, so I just want to go through some of the ones that I grabbed this morning. And this is not, by far, not all of the helpful comments, but this is just a few for us to look at, just to clarify before we move on. So looking on the left-hand side, I'll zoom that in for you. So this is from that really confusing part of the interview where I nearly had a complete utter meltdown trying to understand what was being said. Thankfully, one of our Spanish-speaking subscribers has helped us out here. So Angelica says that even Jenn's mother was always confronting Jenn about the sleeping situation. In other words, Yolanda did know. Jenn would tell Yolanda that Stefan was harmless. Angelica also had a private conversation with Jenn as friends, and she reiterated that it was a normal thing for her because she was confident he would never hurt Maddie. And I'm just going to add the comment below because it is so on point. ETA, it looks like anyone confronting Jenn about Stefan and Maddie sleeping together would get the same reply from Jenn, excusing it. So that clarifies the Yolanda situation. So Yolanda knew and she was always confronting Jenn about it. She never did anything about it. She just confronted Jenn about it. She should have taken it a step further, in my opinion. You have Angelica having a private conversation with Jenn, and Jenn basically told her it was a normal thing and she was confident in Stefan. So Jenn brushed her off, essentially told her to butt out and mind her own business. Now, clearly I was already in a flap when the interpreter was talking about what time Angelica got home, because I must have said that she got home between 11 and 11:30. In my mind, I was thinking I knew that she got home at 11:30, but I must have misstated it. So the correction basically is Angelica said her shift works until 11 and got home at 11:30. Another wonderful comment which I find extremely helpful. You would have heard me just getting all confused and stressed out over the timeline that Angelica was giving, because it just was very vague and the times seemed to be out and nothing seemed to match. So another person has said, I apologise if this has already been said, and I mean absolutely no offence to anyone. No offence taken. It is important for us to understand these cultural differences. However, I remember reading somewhere that Hispanic culture includes a somewhat casual or relaxed attitude to time. I think some of Angelica's answers might reflect that, and it may be why the detective doesn't press her too hard. So that makes sense. That helps me understand that. Look, I think every culture has people in it too with time issues. I have an uncle who, anytime we had family gatherings, my grandmother used to tell him that it was actually starting an hour earlier than it did, because then at least he would only be about half an hour to an hour late. And a few more translation corrections, and to this person, you know who you are, you rock, and I'm so grateful. What Angelica said about the noises matches the translation. She isn't too good at describing the noises. They were obviously loud enough and regular enough to be anyone placing things on the table. So that clarifies that. I thought it was just a issue with translation because it was so vague. And the question of Jenn's door. This was the other one where I had a little bit of a meltdown trying to understand what was being said. So about Jenn's door, Angelica said that Jenn's door is always either ajar or wide open. The door is never shut. On Sunday night, the door was ajar. It sounds like a lot of answers because the interpreter asks her to differentiate between how the door is usually kept and how it was that night. Later, when you can't hear the interpreter is saying, later when you can't hear what the interpreter is saying, they're discussing again that Jenn's door is either ajar or wide open but never shut. Same goes for when Stefan was going in and out of Jenn's room. He never closed the door shut. So I hope that helps everyone as much as it has helped me. I have to say it is definitely a huge relief for me to have someone explaining it to me, because I was just getting so frustrated yesterday, which was probably the main reason that video ended up being so short, because I spent so much time going back over the audio, trying to understand what was being said, adding in the closed captions, and then of course they went all over the place. It was just one of those complete utter disasters, I have to say. So today's a new day. I at least know that I have people who will help me out in the comments section and clarify things where I get completely lost. And I'm ready to tackle the next part of this interview. So with that said, having just spent 15 minutes yabbering on, let's jump into the interview again.
Y yo, bueno,
Did you know Stefan was coming that Sunday?
Que si usted sabía que Stefan iba a venir ese domingo,
para nada. No.
que no, ya.
Would Jennifer tell her when Stefan was coming?
Que si Jennifer te decía a ti cuando iba a venir Stefan.
No.
Now, I find it incredibly rude that Jen didn't actually tell either of her flatmates that Stefan was going to be there, particularly given that he was going to be sleeping in the upstairs room, which is essentially their space up there. And we know that Angelica wasn't overly comfortable with having him around because of her asking for him not to use the upstairs bathroom. So it really does seem incredibly inconsiderate of Jen. We know that she did know beforehand that Stefan was going to be there. So, I don't know, it's just really poor, if you ask me.
Okay. When he moved out, when did he move out?
No recuerdo cuándo se mudó. La verdad no recuerdo, pero ya teníamos como alrededor de 3 meses. La verdad no recuerdo una fecha exacta porque yo o sea, yo vivía acá, pero no estaba como en este momento se está mudando. Pero como alrededor
What
de,
month?
no sé.
Como que mes, si te un estimado.
No sé qué mes decir, a ver, yo empecé a trabajar, déjame ver si. Yo empecé a trabajar en el tapatío como en octubre.
Started working at Tapatio in October.
Y él estaba aún acá.
He was still here.
Como en noviembre,
Around
como algo
November,
así.
maybe, she thinks.
When you started Tapatio, was he living here or up there?
Arriba.
So her routine changed from October onwards, and I wonder if that affected how things were happening in room 4, because if she was doing those shifts where she was finishing work at 11, anyone who's worked those kind of shifts knows that it takes several hours to wind down. So she would have been getting home late and taking 2-3 hours to wind down before finally crashing out. I mean, we can tell from what she's describing that it clearly didn't bother him that she was there because there was all the banging noises happening. But I just wonder if it did make a difference in any way. That said, I mean, a lot of people who work in the service industry may go from one job to another similar job, so it's possible that she could have been working those kind of hours before.
Okay.
O incluso algo muy importante que fue que toda la familia habló conmigo para ver si yo estaba de acuerdo en que él viviera
A
arriba.
very important thing is the whole family spoke to her to see if she was okay with him living upstairs.
Porque
Because
solo éramos mujeres.
it was all women here.
Cuando llegué a vivir a esta casa solo éramos mujeres.
When she first started living here, it was all women.
Y eso me gustó mucho, eso fue lo que más me gustó.
And she liked that about living here.
Como a los 3 o 4 meses que yo estaba viviendo acá, fue que Stefan se mudó a vivir acá.
Moved here.
Now, that's really interesting to hear that she was already moved in before Stefan moved in, which is what Angelica said too. The pair of them had moved in early 22, I think she said, and then Stefan moved in a few months later. And she's saying the whole family spoke to her before he moved in. So it sounds like the family at least asked her and Angelica, are you okay with him moving into the townhouse. I can't help wondering, given Yolanda's disapproval of Stefan, if perhaps she was hoping that one or both of the flatmates would have said, no, we moved in because we wanted to live in a all-female house. I mean, I recognise that there's a bit of an imbalance there in terms of power because, Jenn is family, Jen's in the master bedroom downstairs, and she's the one wanting to bring her boyfriend into the house. So that does make it harder for the other flatmates to say, I'm not happy with this, because essentially, they're subletting. But I guess, at least the family asked. I think if I were in Angelica's situation, I would definitely express concerns. And as we now know, those concerns would have been well and truly justified.
Y cuando ellos toman la decisión de separarse, él justo había empezado a trabajar en Disney, Stefan.
He started working at Disney.
Y entonces ella pues no lo quería botar de la casa porque tenía esa oportunidad y acá
She
quedaba
didn't
muy
want to
cerca.
kick Stefan out because he had that opportunity so close.
Exacto. Entonces me llamó hasta el señor Juan para preguntarle si yo estaba de acuerdo.
Called her just to verify if she was okay.
Y yo estuve de acuerdo siempre y cuando él no usara el baño.
And she was in agreement with it just as long as he didn't use the bathroom.
Que estuvimos de acuerdo, pero él siguió
We were
usando
in
este baño.
agreement. And so he also,
Sí, entonces,
but he kept using this bathroom.
entonces porque, exacto, arriba hay una habitación donde vive Natalie, ella tiene su baño privado,
There's where Natalie lives, she has her own bathroom.
pero las otras dos habitaciones compartíamos
The
el baño de
other
afuera.
rooms would have to share the outside bathroom.
Entonces, como yo pedí que no usara el baño porque, pues bueno, yo comparto el baño con mujeres, no con hombres.
So she asked, obviously, the exclusive bathroom. She didn't want to share a bathroom with men.
Entonces, él seguía usando acá este.
So he kept using this one.
Pasó un tiempo así
Some time passed.
y a Jenn igual no le gustaba porque
Jen didn't like it either.
porque no, igual seguía entrando a esa habitación, no tenía su
He
privacidad.
kept going in there was no privacy.
Y después fue que decidieron como ya vete, o sea, ya no más.
That's when they decided just like, hey, you gotta leave.
Okay, so you wouldn't know it, but I've just been and had a look through this detective's report, in particular looking at what he wrote with regards to Angelica, hoping that there would have been some clarification in that so that I'm not misquoting here. It turns out he's as sloppy at writing reports as he is at taking interviews. So a lot of what we've heard actually isn't even in his report, which to me is a little bit disturbing because he's left out some really important things. So we get the conversation here about Jenn and Stefan moving or separating and him moving upstairs. And then she says that basically after they had separated, Stefan started this job at Disney, so Jenn didn't want to throw him out because she wanted to give him that opportunity. And then she's talking about Juan checking with her about Stefan moving into room 4, and she put her foot down and said he can move into room 4, but he's not sharing my bathroom. I don't share my bathroom with men. And I understand exactly where she's coming from, and I don't blame her. I mean, can you imagine it? Sharing a bathroom with Stefan Stearns would be like sharing a bathroom with a 6-year-old boy who hasn't learnt to aim and who probably would never in his entire life make the effort to do any cleaning himself. I sure as hell wouldn't want to be sharing a bathroom with him. Now, I was trying to clarify the next part of the discussion by looking in the document at Detective Morris's report, and like I said, the guy is lazy when it comes to writing reports. There was no conversation here whatsoever. None of this was recorded in terms of them deciding that this was why Stefan had to leave. So she's saying about the bathroom, and he kept going to this one here. Now, in yesterday's video, I was saying that I wasn't sure if this interview was being conducted upstairs or downstairs, but there was something said earlier on that made it clear that this interview was done downstairs. So I'm going to take a guess and say that when she's referring to this bathroom, she's referring to the bathroom in the master bedroom downstairs. So my take on this is that she's basically saying that Stefan didn't like having to go all the way downstairs to use the bathroom. So of course he had to be a baby boy about it and make sure that people knew he wasn't happy by the sounds of it. And then as she was saying about, you know, he kept using that bathroom and it became a privacy issue. So it sounds like he may have been overstepping the bounds. It sounds like Jenn threw him out because he was invading her privacy too much downstairs. Or at least this is what Jenn told Angelica. So there's a few things in this. First of all, this whole, and this goes in with Jenn talking about wanting to move Stefan back up from Northport so that he can get his job back at Disney, and she'll let him move into, or let him stay there to support him while he gets on his feet, all that sort of crap. To me, it sounds like Jenn is just repeatedly making excuses for allowing Stefan to be in the house. You know, we have this whole thing of he was coming up to help her with Maddie because she was starting this new job. And I mentioned this in another video. I think this was just her excuse, or their excuse, to slide him back into the house without him paying rent. Because by saying that he was moving in to help with Maddie, it's that whole thing of, I can imagine her putting that to Juan and saying, well, he's only here to help me, so how about if we help him out and don't charge rent? You know, it's, I think there was a bit of dodging happening here. And as for saying that he started this job after him and Jenn separated, and that's why Jenn kept him there, because she wanted to give him that opportunity. We've heard the way Jenn spoke about Stefan. She couldn't stand him. She had no respect for him. She thought he was a loser. And at the end of the day, she's quite possibly a bigger narcissist than him. I can't really see her giving a rat's ass about him having the opportunity with the job at Disney. To me, it sounds like that was yet another convenient excuse. And I suspect they use that to basically rort money from Chris. I'd be interested to know if that's the full amount that was being paid to Juan. But it sounds like there was a lot of manipulation going on here with Jenn and Stefan to keep Stefan in the house. And like I said, Jenn didn't give a rat's ass about Stefan. Why would she care about giving him that opportunity at Disney? And if what Angelica's saying is basically Stefan started the job at Disney after him and Jenn separated. Well, that sounds a bit convenient too. Sounds like there's a lot of convenient timing here and a lot of convenient excuses for simply keeping Stefan in the house. And I just don't buy these excuses. Not when we look at how very little Jenn thought of Stefan. I mean, I think the question's got to be asked. What was Jenn getting out of that whole arrangement? Because, honestly, from what we know of her, there's got to be something that she was getting out of the arrangement for her to agree for Stearns to stay in the house when they were separated and she couldn't stand him. And like I mentioned, we have both Angelica and Deb telling us that when Jenn got in fights with Maddie essentially ran to Stefan, meaning that's all the more reason for Jenn to be resentful of Stefan. All the more reason for her to want him out of the house. So again, why was she so intent on keeping him there? And why was she so intent on bringing him back? Even after admitting that things were better between her and Maddie after he moved out. And yes, in case you were wondering, that is my older Chihuahua Amira trying to empty the entire biscuit dispenser by the sounds of it.
How did Stefan take it?
¿Él cómo reaccionó cuando pasó eso?
Con lo del baño,
Cuando le dijeron ya
¿de ella?
tiene que...
No sé, porque cuando yo estuve el día que hizo la mudanza y él pues no estaba muy contento.
She was here when he was doing the whole moving process and he was not happy.
How did Maddie take it when he was moving out?
Maddie cómo reaccionó cuando se estaba mudando.
La vimos normal.
She, as far as she saw normal.
How was Maddie's demeanor when after Stefan moved out?
Maddie como el comportamiento, como era después de que él se fue. Ya que él se fue, se mudó.
Pues bien, normal. Ella seguía durmiendo con su mamá.
She continued to sleep with mom.
Y iba a su escuela normal.
She would go to school like normal.
Seguía llegando a jugar en su computadora.
Keep playing on her computer.
O sea, no, yo no vi algo extraño en ella.
She didn't really see anything strange.
So it sounds like it was pretty much business as usual for Maddie after Stefan moved out. Angelica says she seemed normal, and then when asked about her demeanour, she says good, and that Maddie continued to sleep with Jenn. She continued to go to school like normal. She kept playing on her computer. She didn't see anything strange, anything out of the ordinary. I would have liked a clarifying question here in terms of, did she seem happier, sadder? How was her relationship with Jenn? Did it improve? Did it stay the same? Just to cover the things that we've heard discussed elsewhere. I kind of feel that Detective Morris just didn't do his homework before he did these interviews with Angelica and Natalie. I mean, this is a week into the investigation after Maddie was unalived. So he should have at least had conversation with the detectives who were covering the case before Kiss Me took over, or got hold of reports, or any of those things that would actually guide his questioning in this interview. He's had a week to follow up on interviews that, or he's had more than a week. I mean, some of those interviews that were done really, really early in the piece. So I just feel that he really did drop the ball with these interviews.
Solo eso que siempre llamaba, sí, seguían en comunicación.
Just that they continued communication. So Maddie y Stefan, right? Between Maddie and Stefan, they continued to communicate.
How would they communicate?
¿Cómo se comunicaban?
Por teléfono.
Okay, like call, text, or an app application?
A veces llamadas, no sé si era por texto porque hasta ahí llego yo. Pues, no,
Sometimes calls, she doesn't know if it was text.
Pero sí llegué a escuchar varias llamadas
She
de
did
ellos.
hear that there were several calls.
Okay, would Maddie be down here, or kind of like whenever Maddie would call him, would she try to like hide herself, or?
Maddie llamaba, ¿dónde se encontraba ella? La veía. Maddie, cuando ella llamaba a Stefan, ¿ella dónde estaba? Ella estaba aquí con.
Se metía en su cuarto, o sea, aquí mismo en la casa.
Sí. O se escondía ella cuando hablaba por teléfono.
No, podíamos, una vez recuerdo que Jenn y yo estábamos hablando acá en la cocina y la niña entró a su habitación a hablar con él. Acá.
One time she remembers they were there and I went in there to talk to him on the phone.
Where was Jenn?
Jenn, ¿dónde se encontraba?
Acá.
Aquí también estaban. Son las tres estaban, Stefan llamó y Maddie fue para allá para hablar.
O sea, recuerdo una conversación cuando pues yo llegaba a trabajar y normalmente me preparaba algo y a veces Jenn salía a conversar conmigo. Y recuerdo una vez que ellas nos habían discutido o algo por sus quehaceres, que nunca lo hacía, y entonces quiero hablar con Stefan, y entonces ella entraba con el teléfono a hablar con él acá en la habitación.
I guess there was a disagreement over chores, as she recalls, and so she just simply went to speak to Stefan on the phone.
So Maddie went to speak to Stefan in the room about chores.
Yeah, over chores, yeah.
Over chores.
¿Algo qué?
Que Maddie, lo que se dice es que Maddie entró al cuarto a hablar con Stefan por teléfono sobre los...
Lo que había pasado, de la discusión que había tenido con su mamá.
Yeah, over the argument that they had.
So we have Angelica saying that she felt it was strange that they were still in contact after Stefan moved out. And I think what's interesting about that is that it's not uncommon for people to remain amicable when relationships end. So for her to say that she thought it was strange says to me that she had some sort of gut feeling that there was something about it that just wasn't right. So he asked her how the communication occurred, and she's like, well, by phone, but she didn't know if there were any text messages, but she points out here that there were several calls made, which to me suggests that it was definitely an ongoing thing. We know that there were text messages between Maddie and Stefan. One thing that I did see in Detective Morris's report is that the message about the parenting coins occurred during the period of time after Stefan moved out. So it occurred sometime between beginning of December and end of February. So he's asked her about where Maddie was when she was speaking on the phone with Stefan. And she's saying that the times that she's observed it, Maddie's gone into Jenn's room. And she's saying there that the three of them were all there together. Now, we don't know how many times she observed that. here's where I have questions that should have been answered in this interview. So she spoke about one instance of Maddie and Jenn arguing over chores, and Maddie decided to ring Stefan, and she went into that room, which I'm guessing is probably Jenn's room, to speak to Stefan. And now Detective Morris doesn't actually clarify at this point in time if on those occasions when Maddie was actually in an argument with Jenn, and when she contacted Stefan because she was in an argument, he hasn't clarified if on those occasions Maddie and Jenn were both in the room together when Maddie contacted Stefan, or if Maddie was on her own speaking to Stefan on those occasions. And that's really important information that we need to know. But I think one thing that we can be fairly certain of is that Angelica definitely sounds like she is being completely upfront and completely honest. There is nothing in the way she's talking that brings up red flags for me. She is just basically answering the questions directly. She's not going off on a tangent. She's not over-explaining. And the things that she's saying definitely match with things that we already know. So I think she's going to be a crucial witness when this goes to court. And I just hope that when they did her deposition, that they got a proper bilingual interpreter. Someone or a few people questioned, it seems like they've probably used a police, Kiss Me police staff as translators. And yes, from looking at the reports from Detective Morris, these were sergeants who did the translating. So ironically, the sergeant who is doing the translation here, his last name is Soto.
Okay. All right. Going back to Monday, when you came down here to make breakfast, you said Stefan was here, but you didn't see Jenn?
No.
Okay. Did you see Jenn at any point that morning, Monday morning?
No.
Okay.
Now that's very useful information to have, because that helps us to confirm the actual timeline here in terms of, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, Angelica's not good with time. So what I would imagine, based on what she has said, is that the two times when she was downstairs or around and observed Stefan would have been during the morning after he got back at 10:15, between 10:15 and 5 to 11 is when the first lot of things were occurring with Stefan. And then in the afternoon, it would have been after Jenn had left to supposedly pick up Maddie, and after Stefan had returned, so sometime from 2:39 onwards. No, sorry, Stefan returned, that was when Jenn left. Roughly from 2:45 onwards.
How was Steven acting? How was Stefan acting? Was he look nervous?
Sí, como nervioso. O sea, yo analizando toda la situación, ahora él estaba muy extraño ese día.
Like how?
Como, ¿qué sentido?
O sea, por eso.
What is he doing different that day than he would any other day?
Que como que hacía...
Me lo veía como muy, como entraba, salía, como
agitado,
nervioso, como nervioso.
Like nervous.
Como nervioso, era como raro, no sé.
Upbeat, from what she was just describing.
Have you ever seen him act that way before?
Si lo has visto él actuar así antes o...
Yo me he puesto a recordar mucho, ¿no? Y una vez, yo lo vi con esos mismos nervios una vez que estaba esperando
One time that she saw
un
him
paquete.
nervous like that when he was expecting a package.
Sí, o sea, él cada vez que pedía algo por Amazon o algo, no sé, una vez yo recuerdo que él recibió una caja y él abría la puerta como para ver qué recibe.
When was that?
No sé, no tengo ni idea.
Like a month, 2 months, year?
No puedo decir un tiempo porque yo tengo todas mis memorias vienen a mi mente, pero sin tiempo, ¿sí me explico? O sea, pero también llegué a verlo en otros momentos así como y una vez recuerdo que sí, le llegaba un paquete y abría la puerta a ver si lo recibía, si venía.
Okay, once again, I'm going to need a bit of help from translators because, again, he spoke over the top of her and I couldn't really catch everything that he was saying. So, as she's saying that in retrospect, Stefan's behaviour on that Monday morning on the Monday was very strange. And now, this is something that I had not caught when I listened to this interview before. Or maybe I caught it and I just didn't realise the significance. But Detective Morris asks Angelica if she'd ever seen him that way before. And she's talking about Stefan getting a package. She didn't know if it was from Amazon or where it was from, but he kept opening and closing the door, waiting for it to arrive. Now, the question was, when did this occur? I think the answer was that she doesn't remember, but honestly, I couldn't catch that. That was one of the bits where he was mumbling and talking over the top of her. And of course, because it was mumbling, because it was talking over the top of her, this program didn't actually pick up on any of it, so we didn't even get subtitles. Okay, before I play this next bit, I'm just going to give you a heads up to listen really, really carefully to what is being discussed here. He's about to ask her about Stefan and medications, and the conversation turns to the sort of rugs that he was getting into. I figure by giving you a heads up beforehand, you can correct anything that I may misinterpret, and of course those of you who are acting as our interpreters can listen for anything that is not conveyed, particularly in relation to some of the verbiage that is used in terms of, is he translating the correct verbiage? And you'll see I'll explain that more in a moment.
Okay, does she know of any medication that Stefan was taking?
¿Sabes si Stefan estaba tomando algún medicamento?
Yo sé que él fumaba drogas.
That she knows he would smoke drugs.
Sabía. Pero sé que las había dejado cuando empezó el trabajo en Disney.
He supposedly stopped when he started Disney.
Y luego, cuando terminó, yo lo veía consumiendo todo.
Cuando terminó Disney. que
Sí, o
empezó
sea,
otra vez cuando
sí,
terminó
él
Disney,
sí,
empezó otra vez.
exactamente.
As far as she knows, he stopped when he started Disney, but when he stopped at Disney, he started consuming drugs again.
Okay, so the question I have for our resident translators, he is talking about Stefan and his rugs, and first of all he says that he smoked them, and then he says after he finished at Disney he started consuming them again. So I'm wondering if that fits with the translation, or if he's sort of not quite getting the language there. So she's basically saying that prior to beginning work at Disney, he was smoking rugs. And then she says supposedly when he started working at Disney, he stopped. And then when he finished working at Disney, he started again. But this time we have consuming as opposed to just smoking. Now, here's something interesting that I just learned, because I found that really, really interesting, that someone like Stefan could possibly consider stopping using rugs for the sake of a job. So I actually did a little bit of research, and it turns out that Disney actually do test their employees. And I'm wondering if that's why Jenn had to do her blood test on that Monday, because she was, I mean, that's still a Disney hotel that she was working at, right? So basically, Disney pre-test employees. In other words, they have to be tested before they can start working. And then they have random tests on their employees. So they can just turn around and say to an employee, okay, you're up for a random test. Which is good to know. But it certainly raises a few questions. We know that Jenn was getting into stuff, definitely, the night after Maddie went missing. So her claims of she needed to get Stefan to come and help her with Maddie because she'd started working, and then talking about the Sunday night and saying she'd missed her meds and she was out of sorts because she'd missed her meds. Well, if this Coronado Springs or whatever, if they use the same policy as Disney within the theme parks, then there's a good chance that for the past couple of weeks, Jenn had been off her special meds. And maybe that's why she needed Stefan to come and help, because she was coming off meds and wasn't coping. That could also explain her story about missing her meds on the Sunday night and needing Stefan to take control, and why she's claiming that she wasn't right while she was at work on the Sunday. Because as I mentioned, when it comes to bipolar medication, it's like a lot of those kinds of medications, it's a long-term lasting medication, meaning that it takes several months to get it balanced for starters, before you actually start to get the full effect of it. It's getting that balance, getting it into your system essentially, and then when you're on a regular dose and it's all kind of levelled out and it's working fine, missing one dose of medication isn't going to affect you. So is this what is the real truth behind Jenn and this story about feeling out of sorts because she hadn't had her medication? And is this the reason she wanted Stefan to go and help her? Because she couldn't take her regular rugs because of this new job. Food for thought.
Okay. All right. So she gets home around 11:30, and you go upstairs, and you're hearing noises then coming from his room.
Sí, de ese cuarto, sí, de
Okay.
ese cuarto.
Were the noises consistent until you went to sleep, or did they stop at one point?
Que los sonidos que estabas oyendo, que desde que llegaste, los
Hasta que
sonidos
yo me
eran
dormí.
consistentes o pararon en algún momento.
Consistente hasta que yo pues me dormí.
They were consistent until she fell asleep.
Okay. What do you think the noises were?
¿Qué piensa que los sonidos eran?
Como te he dicho en toda oportunidad, eran como poner objetos. O sea, siempre fue
Like
ese
she
mismo
mentioned,
sonido.
it just sounded like items were being like put down or placed.
Did she ever hear those noises in the past coming from his
¿En el
room?
pasado
A
oíste
veces,
eso?
a
Cosas
veces
así.
sí.
Sí, sometimes.
Okay, so this really bothers me. And clearly it's bothering the detective because he's doubled back to actually ask about it again. So these noises are consistent from 11:30 through until when she fell asleep at around 2:30. And to her, she can't really figure out what the noises are, so she's describing it as like objects being put down or placed. And she's making those kind of banging noises. So what I would like to know is consistent as in there were no breaks at all in those sounds, or consistent as in she heard it repeatedly during that 3-hour period, but there were breaks in between. I don't know how to put this delicately, but she didn't hear Maddie's voice. So to me that suggests that Maddie was already rugged, because I have no doubt that she was that night. I finally got the courage up to read through the charges, and yes, there were multiple occasions when they have basically said she appeared to be asleep, and it's not something that you sleep through. And I'm just wondering if the noises weren't necessarily things being picked up and put down, but more I'm really struggling with this. I don't want to trigger people and I want to be respectful, but I'm wondering if they could have been noises that were being made by a bed. I'm sorry, that's the best way I can think of saying it without being disrespectful. Because I'm so baffled by what she's saying here. And he's asked her, have you heard these noises in the past? And she says, sometimes. But it's definitely frustrating that he hasn't clarified exactly what she meant by that they were consistent. Because if it was just a banging that went for 3 hours with no interruptions, then it would have to be something different. So I think that is important information, and once again, this detective has dropped the ball.
Okay. Any other noises that may have stood out other than that?
Que algún
¿Algún
otro
otro
sonido
sonido?
que
Después yo me quedé dormida, la verdad que no sé.
no, just after she fell asleep, that was pretty much it.
All right. When after you fall asleep, would you hear anybody? Would you be able to hear anybody coming up and down the stairs?
Que después de que se duerme, podría oír a alguien si alguien sube por las escalas,
Por las escaleras.
Or doors open and shut?
o si alguien abre una puerta o cierra una puerta, usted lo oiría, o
Sí, yo creo que yo lo podría oír.
to possibly hear it. You know,
Pero yo no escuché
But she
escaleras
didn't
ese día.
that night.
So she's saying that she didn't hear any other noises other than those banging noises. And he asks her specifically, after you fall asleep, do you hear noises like someone going up and down the stairs or doors opening and shutting? And she says, yeah, possibly, but she didn't hear anything that night. And I think what we've got to realise is that it depends where you're at in your sleep pattern. Because if you are in deep sleep, then you may not hear those noises. Whereas if you have come out of your deep sleep cycle and you're in that REM cycle, then yes, you may become aware of noises around you. I know when it comes to my older dog, she's about 12 or 13 now, and she just doesn't last through the night without needing to go outside these days. And I will come out of a deep sleep and hear her essentially tap dancing out in the hallway, waiting for me to wake up and take her outside. And the times when I actually do wear my Fitbit to bed and I have a look the next day, I can see that I've been in that REM sleep at the times when Tarka's woken me up. And I'm just going to say, I'm not standing up for Jen or anything, but her saying that she doesn't necessarily wear her Apple Watch when she's in bed, I can relate to that, because for the most part I will take my Fitbit off when I go to bed because I just find it uncomfortable, and that's smaller than an Apple Watch.
Okay. Have you ever witnessed Maddie get ready for school?
En algún momento vio cuando Mari se arreglaba para ir a la escuela.
Sí.
What would be her routine?
¿Cuál era la rutina de Mari?
Ella se paraba toda soñolienta.
Get up all cheery.
Bueno, la mamá la peleaba, ya párate.
The mom would tell her to get out.
Salía para sacar su ropita acá.
She would come out to get her clothing.
Luego tomaba el desayuno.
She would have a breakfast.
Y luego Jenn la dejaba dormir como unos 20 minutitos más.
Jen would let her sleep like about 20 more minutes or so.
Para que descansara un poquito más. Y luego sí la llevaban a la...
And then she would take her to school.
Again, I need a little bit of help here in terms of double checking the translation. So the discussion here is Maddie getting ready for school. And what Angelica says is that something happens, and I didn't catch what the translator was saying. Then Jenn tells her to get up. She comes out and gets her clothing and then has breakfast. So I would have liked clarification here as to where she normally gets dressed. this she comes out and gets her clothing, to me, implies that she does not get dressed in her fake bedroom. And honestly, what teenager would want to get dressed in that bedroom? Because it's not a real bedroom, it's not overly private. So, if she actually is specifically saying here that Maddie was getting her clothing, that to me suggests that Maddie gets up, goes into her fake room, gets her clothes, goes back into Jen's room and gets dressed. But of course, we're not given clarification on that. We're not even given clarification with regards to, after getting her clothing, does she get dressed before she has breakfast? Or does she have her little lie down and then get dressed after that? I'm thinking that logically she would come out and get her clothing and then go and get dressed and then have breakfast. But let me know if there was something different that Angelica actually said. Now, this sounds a lot like the account that Jenn gave. In her interview, she said that she wakes Maddie up, Maddie gets herself ready, and then Maddie has another lie down while Jenn prepares breakfast for Maddie. And then apparently after she's had breakfast, she does all her morning stuff like brushing her hair and her teeth and putting on her makeup. So the difference here is that what Angelica is saying is that Maddie has a lie down, or Jenn lets her have a lie down after she's had her breakfast. So many of us have debated whether Jenn was the sort of parent who would bother making breakfast for Maddie, or whether Maddie would make her own breakfast. And it sounds like Jenn was lying. We don't hear mention from Angelica of Jenn making Maddie's breakfast, and perhaps more importantly, while it turns out that Jenn was allowing Maddie to have a bit more of a lie down before heading to school, this was happening after Maddie had had breakfast, not while Jenn was making Maddie's breakfast. So apparently Jenn was lying, just trying to sound like she was super mum, which we know she wasn't. But if the translation is correct, this also provides clarification in that it appears that Maddie collected her clothes and then presumably got dressed in Jen's room. So Jenn was either comfortable with Maddie getting dressed in Stefan's room on the Monday morning, or she just realised that Maddie didn't need to get dressed on the Monday morning. All these things that Maddie does preparing for school, like most children, are things that she was doing in Jen's room. We never hear Jenn saying, I never saw Maddie that morning, she should have come in to do these things, she should have come in to get her medication. Not once. And it sounds like, amongst other things, Maddie would also get dressed in Jen's room. In other words, all Maddie's preparation for school normally happened in Jen's room. And yet, Jenn hasn't questioned Stefan apparently coming in to put the leash on Sailor, waking her up, and her not seeing Maddie in her room getting ready. She never woke up and asked Stefan, is Maddie up? Because of the absence of Maddie in her room, the absence of any sound from Maddie. I just don't buy it.
Has she ever seen Stefan take her to school?
En algún momento Stefan la llevó ahí a la escuela.
O sea,
O si viste algún
nunca
momento.
llegué a ver que él fuera el que la llevara a la escuela, siempre era Jenny.
Never saw him taking her to school. She would always see Jennifer taking her to school.
Bueno,
So we have that audio of Natalie saying to one of the police officers that she thought it was weird for Stefan to take Maddie to school. We have Maddie's best friend saying, no, Stefan has never taken Maddie to school. And we have Angelica saying, Stefan has never taken Maddie to school. It is always Jenn. Now, of all the people who have been interviewed throughout this, the two people who I see as most credible, the two people who I see as having given no indication that they are lying in any way, are Angelica and Maddie's best friend. And both of them have said Stefan never took Maddie to school. The fact that Jenn herself lied about it on several occasions, with various accounts of how often Stefan took Maddie to school, to me says that Jenn definitely knew. Jenn was covering for Stefan. Why would she cover for him? And why would she tell detectives that he has taken Maddie to school before a few times to cover for this story of him taking Maddie to school on the Monday morning? If she knew absolutely nothing about what Stefan had done to Maddie, if she had not known that him supposedly taking Maddie to school and dropping her off was just a big alibi, then she would have been upfront with detectives and said, no, Stefan's never taken Maddie to school before. But instead she lied. I mean, seriously, how much more evidence do they need? This woman was in on it. She covered up for this monster. She didn't turn around and dob him in for what he did to her daughter. No, she lied throughout the investigation. She came up with lies that basically covered his ass because she just didn't give a damn about her daughter.
y la última semana que le estaba llevando la abuelita a la escuela, pero
And the última semana, the last week it was grandma taking her to school.
Okay, it feels wrong to be being so critical of this detective, but honest to God, this guy is not asking any important questions throughout this interview. So in the last week, before everything happened, Yolanda was taking Maddie to school. Well, here's the clarification that I would like to know. Was that every day during that last week that Yolanda was taking Maddie to school? And in which case, was Yolanda collecting Maddie from the townhouse and taking her to school? Or was Maddie staying with Yolanda? Because we had that slip up from Jenn when asked, when did you last see Maddie? And she came out with Wednesday. And many people have speculated that that could in fact be the truth. The thing is, we don't have a solid answer in terms of where Maddie was during that entire week preceding what happened. We know that she was staying at Yolanda's, but we've not heard anything concrete in terms of exact days and nights when Maddie was with Yolanda at her place. I mean, you could take what has just been said here by Angelica two ways. One, that Yolanda picked up Maddie from the townhouse and took her to school on some mornings, or two, that Maddie spent the entire week at Yolanda's. We did have that interesting account from Maddie's best friend about Maddie saying that she wasn't taking her meds. We have Jenn talking about Maddie not taking her meds, the ones that keep her regular. And we also had Jenn very specifically saying that the reason she wanted Stefan to come up was because otherwise she wouldn't see Maddie through the week while she was working. And if her working routine was the same in terms of having Mondays and Tuesdays off, then it is quite plausible that the last time she saw Maddie was the Wednesday. Maybe she dropped Maddie off at school on the Wednesday and Maddie went home to Yolanda's place after school on Wednesday and then stayed for the rest of the week up until either Saturday or Sunday. And see, even that hasn't been clarified.
Okay. Were you here Saturday? The Saturday, the 25th, I guess it would be.
Sábado el 25.
Or the 24th.
O el 24.
Déjame recordar. El sábado. No recuerdo qué trabajé yo. A ella se le celebró el cumpleaños el domingo.
Just trying to remember. So Sunday, her birthday was celebrated.
No recuerdo mi horario del sábado,
Doesn't remember her schedule.
pero
for
yo
Saturday,
nunca dejé de dormir
but-
en esta casa, siempre llegaba a dormir,
But she never stopped sleeping in this house. She would always come here to sleep.
siempre. No recuerdo el tiempo, la verdad, que yo llegué acá, no recuerdo mi horario del
Doesn't
sábado.
really recall her schedule on Saturdays.
Okay. Do you know if Maddie and Jenn were here Saturday?
No recuerdo.
She doesn't remember.
Okay.
Again, he dropped the bundle. She doesn't work a 9 to 5 job, so he is just assuming that she didn't work on the Saturday, even though she's already established the fact that she did work Sunday. But he seems to have forgotten that completely, so he's asking if she saw Maddie on the Saturday. She's saying she can't remember what her routine was on Saturday. She's like, she knows Maddie had her birthday on the Sunday, but as for Angelica, she can't remember what her routine was on the Saturday. She just knows that obviously at the end of the day she does go home to sleep in the townhouse. Now, it would have been quite easy to simply ask her, do you work on Saturdays? If so, did you work that Saturday? Because that could at least give some indication of when she definitely wouldn't have been around the house. Now, she's saying that she doesn't recall seeing, or she doesn't even know if she saw Jenn and Maddie on the Saturday. Well, I'm going to say that she probably wouldn't have anyway. Why am I saying that? We know that she didn't work on the Monday, so she slept in, pretty much had the day at home. And for many people who work in the service industry, obviously Mondays and Tuesdays are your weekend, because they're the quiet part of the week. They're the times when people aren't going to restaurants and stuff like that. So I'm going to say that she probably worked on the Saturday. It's a shame that the detective hasn't actually clarified any of this. But if her work schedule is the same in terms of when she begins work and when she ends work, and if hypothetically her weekend is Monday, Tuesday, then yes, she may not have gotten up till later on Saturday morning, and it may have been after Jenn had already left to go to work. And of course, we know that Maddie was with Yolanda and Juan on the Saturday. So we can't know if Maddie was maybe collected early by one of them, or if she stayed at Yolanda's on Friday night, or what's going on, because no one's really answered that. So I actually would imagine that she may not have seen either Maddie or Jenn on Saturday, because she probably got up too late to see either one of them, and then got home too late to see either one of them. But of course, all I can do is speculate, because Detective Morris didn't bother to ask her about her work schedule. Now, I think that based on the amount of audio that's left to listen to, and based on the fact that we're approaching an hour and a half with this video, that I think this is a good spot to stop, and also gives people a bit of a chance to catch up, because I know that with the Jack and Lily Sullivan case, that there's been a lot to watch lately on YouTube, and I think a few people are feeling that they're perhaps a little bit behind in terms of keeping up with the content. So once again, in anticipation, thank you to my bilingual subscribers. I am so grateful for your help with this interview. I will certainly be looking into seeing if I can get the Spanish isolated and putting that onto a separate video, so that for those of you who are bilingual, you may be able to help me out a bit, and we can hopefully get a really clear idea of what's going on with this interview. Thank you in advance for helping me with the bits with this where I was confused. I definitely appreciate that. Now, in terms of the timeline leading up to the Sunday night, I'm still quite confused about that. And I know that there's various interviews where this has been discussed. I feel like I'm missing something here, or I'm forgetting something here. So just, don't be afraid to remind me and point out, well, actually, dummy, this has been really clearly stated elsewhere, because at this moment, if it has been stated elsewhere, then definitely I am a bit of a dummy. I do have the feeling that Maddie was at Yolanda's at least from Wednesday. That is my understanding, based on multiple things. But if there is actually something solid that you can recall, let me know. Because this is certainly one of those instances where it would be better for us to actually be clear rather than to continue speculating. So I'm going to leave it at that. I am definitely anticipating reading your comments, and I will be, once I finish recording this, sitting down to read your comments from yesterday, because I kind of just jumped straight into this morning and didn't get through many comments at all. So on that note, thank you for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. And of course, please hit the like button. And please do leave a comment below. I think there's a lot of significant things that were brought up in this interview. And I do think that Natalie is going to be one of the most important witnesses when this all goes to trial. And I have to say, I really hope that she has been interviewed again since this, specifically in relation to Jenn, because I think her testimony could be crucial for getting Jenn charged. So on that note, thank you for listening, and I will catch you in the next one.
I begin to wonder